The bag that should have stayed quiet. Keanu Reeves stood quietly in line. At the small regional airport, it was raining outside. Soft drizzles tapping the windows like a gentle reminder that sometimes life pours on you when you least expect it. He wore a plain black hoodie, jeans that looked a little faded, and carried a single, old backpack on his shoulder. Most people in the line had no idea who he was. The few who did kept stealing glances, but were too shy to say anything. Keanu didn't mind. He liked it this way, blending in, almost invisible, no fuss, no attention. In front of him, a young mother struggled with her crying toddler. The little boy kicked his legs and threw his stuffed dinosaur on the floor. The mother's eyes were red and tired. Keanu bent down, picked up the toy, and handed it back to the boy. The mother whispered a weak thank you. Keanu smiled. It was such a small thing, but for that mother, in that moment, it meant everything. When he finally reached the check-in counter, the airline crew behind the desk looked restless. They were under pressure. Flights were delayed. The storm outside threatened to turn into something more. The young man at the counter barely looked at Keanu. He took his passport, checked the screen, and sighed impatiently. Keanu tried to be patient. He always did. He knew people had their bad days. You got a bag to check in? The crew member asked in a flat tone, eyes darting past Keanu as if he was an inconvenience. Keanu placed his simple black suitcase on the conveyor belt. It was nothing fancy. A small sticker on the handle read, "Be kind." It had scratches from years of travel. It had been with him through so many cities, so many hotel rooms, so many lonely nights. To him, it wasn't just a bag. It was a piece of home that traveled with him wherever he went. The crew member tagged the bag and signaled to the baggage handler standing nearby. This handler, a young guy with his cap turned backwards, clearly didn't recognize Keanu. He smirked at his co-worker, rolled his eyes, and then, without a second thought, shoved the bag off the belt so hard it hit the metal railing with a thud. The loud bang made a few people in line turn their heads. The handler laughed under his breath. The other crew members chuckled to them. It was just a bag, just another day. Keanu saw it all. He felt the knot tighten in his stomach. He didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at the bag lying there like a wounded animal. For a moment, anger bubbled inside him, but he pressed it down. He knew anger wouldn't change anything. He had learned that long ago. Instead, he whispered softly, almost to himself, "Take care of what doesn't belong to you. It might one day." The crew didn't hear him. They had already turned away to chat among themselves. The young mother behind Keanu gave him a sad look. She had seen it too. She whispered, "That was rude." Keanu nodded. "It's all right," he said. But deep down, he felt a small crack in his chest, not because of the bag, but because of how easy it was for people to forget kindness when they thought nobody was watching. As he walked toward the boarding gate, the rain fell harder. Thunder rolled in the distance. Keanu sat near the window, his eyes following the baggage handlers outside. They were loading luggage roughly onto carts, tossing bags like they were worthless. The same handler who had thrown his bag was now laughing with another worker. They joked, pushed each other round, and even kicked a suitcase that had fallen off the cart. Every thud made Keanu's heart sink a little more. He wondered how many stories were packed into those suitcases, how many precious things, memories, gifts, or keepsakes people trusted to strangers who didn't care. He wondered when kindness became an extra instead of the standard. His mind drifted back to his mother's words when he was a boy. She used to tell him, "Always be gentle with what belongs to others. It shows the world how he'd want to be treated too." A small voice pulled him out of his thoughts. The same toddler from earlier toddled up to him, his dinosaur dragging behind him on the floor. The boy looked up with wide eyes and climbed onto the seat beside Keanu. The mother ran after him, embarrassed, but Keanu smiled and patted the seat, welcoming the boy. The mother sat too, her shoulders dropping for the first time that day. They talked softly. The boy giggled when Keanu made the dinosaur growl. For a few minutes, the noise of the storm, the careless workers, and the rough world outside disappeared. It was just this, a tired mother, a little boy, and a man who understood the power of small moments. When the boarding call came, Keanu stood, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and helped the mother gather her things. He walked slowly to the gate, the boy waving the dinosaur at him until they disappeared down the jet bridge. Keanu turned one last time, looking at the rain-soaked tarmac. He watched his bag sit on the cart, rain pouring over it, no tarp, no cover, just out there like it didn't matter. The handler who had thrown it now kicked it to make space for another load. Keanu breathed in, felt the anger again, but instead of letting it burn him, he let it light a promise inside him, a promise that some things would change, sooner than they thought. As he stepped into the plane, no one knew what was about to happen. Not the rude crew, not the laughing handlers, not the manager busy looking at spreadsheets. They had no clue that the man in the faded hoodie, the one whose bag they tossed around like trash, was about to become the very person they would all answer to. The storm outside rumbled louder, as if it, too, was waiting for what came next. The wind shifts at 30,000 feet. KeanuReeves settled into his seat by the window. The plane was half empty. The lights inside flickered as the storm outside raged on. The engines hummed, a dull comfort that reminded him how many nights he'd fallen asleep in different time zones, always looking for home but never quite finding it. A flight attendant, a young man named Peter, walked down the aisle with forced cheerfulness. He had the same tired look Keanu had seen on so many faces that day. People who wanted to be somewhere else, doing something kinder. As the plane began to taxi, Keanu looked out the small round window. His suitcase was still visible on the baggage cart, getting soaked under the pouring rain. He caught a glimpse of the same handler, the one with the backwards cap, shoving luggage round roughly. The handler didn't care who might be watching. To him, it was all just stuff, replaceable, worthless. A few rows ahead, an older woman struggled to lift her carry-on into the overhead bin. Peter, the flight attendant, watched but didn't move. Maybe he was too busy. Maybe he was just too used to people fending for themselves. Keanu unbuckled his seatbelt, stood up, and walked over. He took the bag gently from the woman shaking hands and placed it in the bin. She looked at him, her eyes wide. "Thank you, young man," she whispered. He smiled. "We're all young at heart," he said softly. The woman chuckled. Peter finally looked up, embarrassed, but Keanu just nodded and returned to his seat. When the plane lifted off the runway, lightning flashed in the distance. The seatbelt sign dinged. Keanu leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the memories roll over him like the thunder outside. He thought about the handler's smirk, the careless way the crew laughed when his bag hit the railing. He wondered how often this happened, not just to him, but to everyone who trusted their belongings to strangers. He wondered what kind of place this airline was if respect was tossed aside with the luggage. Midway through the flight, Peter came by with the drink cart. He paused at Keanu's row, shifting awkwardly. "Can I get you something, sir?" he asked. Keanu opened his eyes, gave a small smile. "Just water, thank you." Peter poured it quickly, his hands a little shaky. Maybe he knew who Keanu was, maybe he didn't, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, like he knew this flight wasn't as kind as it should be. Behind Peter, two other crew members whispered and giggled. They were gossiping about another passenger in first class, a man who had complained about his seat. They mocked his accent, called him cheap. They didn't care that Keanu could hear every word. To them, he was just another face in economy, invisible, unimportant. Keanu sipped his water and turned to the window again. The storm clouds parted for a moment, revealing the moon's soft glow in that quiet pocket of sky. He made another promise to himself. If you have the power to change something wrong, you should. You can't just sit and watch while people's dignity is treated like trash on a rainy tarmac. An hour later, the turbulence woke him. The plane shuddered, seatbelts clicked tighter. An announcement buzzed overhead. The captain apologized for the rough weather. Peter hurried up and down the aisle, checking on passengers. Keanu felt the fear ripple through the cabin like a wave. A baby started crying. The older woman gripped her armrest so hard her knuckles turned white. Keanu leaned forward and spoke softly to the woman. "We'll be all right," he said. "Just hold on." His voice was steady, a rock in the middle of the storm. The woman breathed out, nodded, and relax just a little." Peter gave Keanu a grateful look but said nothing. The turbulence eased. People settled back. Keanu closed his eyes again, drifting in and out of sleep. In his mind, he saw the faces of the baggage handlers, the rude crew, the soaked bag with the "Be Kind" sticker. He saw his mother's gentle smile, heard her voice telling him that respect is what you do when no one's watching. He thought about what he was about to do, how one simple, hidden decision could remind these people that kindness is not a favor, it's the bare minimum. As the plane began its descent, the city lights below blinked like tiny stars. Keanu took a deep breath, steady and calm. He knew what waited for him at the airport. He had meetings, papers to sign, people to meet. He also knew that the crew who had mocked the passengers, the handler who kicked bags like garbage, they had no idea that the airline they worked for was on the brink of a new ownership deal. They had no clue that the man in the faded hoodie, who helped old ladies and toddlers, was about to become the new owner. The plane touched down with a soft bump. Applause broke out among a few passengers. Keanu just smiled, unbuckled his belt, and stood up slowly. Peter looked at him, eyes wide, like he suddenly realized who he was. Keanu gave him a small nod. "Thank you for trying," he said quietly. Peter's face flushed red. He looked down, ashamed of how little he had actually done. As Keanu stepped off the plane, the storm outside had calmed, but inside the terminal, a storm of another kind was waiting, one that would show everyone that respect, once lost, must be earned back. And sometimes, the quietest man in the room is the one who makes the loudest change. The storm lands inside the terminal. Keanu Reeves stepped off the jet bridge into the hum of the busy terminal. The smell of burnt coffee, cheap perfume, and wet clothes mixed in the air. Passengers hurried past him, dragging suitcases that squeaked on the polished floor. Above him, a loudspeaker called out gate changes and delays in a tired voice. The world moved fast around Keanu, but inside him, everything felt slow, careful. Like each breath was a quiet promise to stay kind even when others forgot how. He spotted his black suitcase on the oversized luggage cart near baggage claim. It looked even more worn now, soaked through with rain, a fresh dent on the corner. The "Be Kind" sticker was half torn off. Keanu walked over, picked it up with both hands, and ran his thumb over the scratches like he was comforting an old friend. He could almost hear the handler's laughter echoing in his mind, the careless shove, the way they kicked other people's bags, the way the crew snickered like it was all a game. A voice called his name. He turned to see a man in a crisp suit, holding an umbrella, hurrying towards him. His name was Grant, one of the senior executives of the airline. The same airline about to finalize its surprise buyout. Mr. Grant had no idea what had happened, in the baggage area or on the plane. To him, Keanu was the star investor, the man who could save the company's crumbling reputation with one signature. "Mr. Reeves, sir." "Welcome, Mr. Grant said, a little too bright, a little too fake. "I trust your flight was pleasant." Keanu looked at him for a moment, studying the lines of nervousness around the man's eyes. "It was educational," Keanu said softly. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. "Mr. Grant laughed awkwardly, missing the quiet weight in Keanu's voice. "The car is ready for you, sir," Mr. Grant said, gesturing toward the exit where a sleek black car waited. "We have the board meeting in 90 minutes. Everyone is eager to see you. The staff doesn't know yet. They're going to be thrilled when they find out who's taking over. Your kindness, your name, it's exactly what this airline needs." Keanu's eyes flickered to the baggage claim again. He spotted the same handler, cap still backwards, leaning against a wall, phone in hand, scrolling without a care. The young man's supervisor stood beside him, both laughing at something on the screen. They still hadn't seen Keanu. They didn't know they were standing feet away from the man they'd mocked. Keanu turned back to Mr. Grant. "Before we leave, I want to talk to some of the crew," he said. "Of course, sir." Mr. Grant stuttered, caught off guard. "Would you like me to gather the senior staff?" "No," Keanu said. "The ones working baggage, the ones who handle people's things. I want to speak to them first." Mr. Grant's eyes widened. He tried to cover his panic with a tight smile. As you wish. Sir. 10 minutes later, Keanu stood in a small staff room behind the baggage area. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The handler with the backwards cap, named Jason, leaned against a locker, arms crossed, staring at Keanu like he was just another passenger who got lost. Beside him stood his supervisor and 2 other handlers. They all looked bored, restless, unaware of the meeting they were about to walk into. Keanu held his old suitcase in his hand. He placed it gently on the bench in front of him. He didn't shout. He didn't wave his arms. He just spoke in the same calm voice he'd used to quiet the old lady during the turbulence. Do you know whose bag this is? Keanu asked. Jason shrugged. No idea, man. Looks like any other bag. Keanu nodded. To you, maybe. But to me, it's a piece of home. It's been with me through airports, hotels, countries. And when you threw it, you didn't just throw my things. You threw away trust. Jason rolled his eyes. Look, dude, we're busy. People get bags thrown around all the time. Keanu's eyes darkened, but his voice stayed soft. Does that make it right? Jason shifted his feet, uncomfortable but trying to look tough. His supervisor cleared his throat, trying to step in. Sir, if you want to file a complaint. Keanu raised his hand. No, I don't want to file a complaint. I want you to understand something. This airline is about to have a new owner. That new owner believes that people's trust is not a joke. People trust you with their memories, their keepsakes, their small pieces of life. When you break that trust, you break the heart of this company. Jason's smirk faded. His supervisor's eyes darted to Mr. Grant, who stood in the corner, sweating. They finally realized what was happening. Keanu looked at each one of them, not with anger but with a quiet, piercing disappointment that made their chests tighten. I didn't come here to punish you, he said. I came here to remind you, every bag you touch is someone's life. Every passenger you serve is someone's family. When you laugh at them, you disrespect yourself. The room fell silent. The only sound was the hum of the broken fan above. For the first time, Jason looked at the old suitcase, at the torn sticker that read "Be kind," and saw it not as junk, but as a lesson. Keanu took a deep breath, then smiled, gentle as a sunrise after a storm. Tomorrow, you'll all have a chance to do better, because tomorrow I sign the papers. And when I do, this airline won't be known for throwing bags and people around. It'll be known for how well it carries what matters. He picked up his suitcase, turned to Mr. Grant, and said quietly, now, let's go meet the board. As he walked out of the staff room, the handlers watched him go, the weight of what he said pressing into their chests like the promise of rain after a dry season. They didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but they knew it wouldn't be the same. The boardroom does not know. KeanuReeves walked through the long corridor of the corporate building, the rain from the airport still dripping from his old suitcase. His shoes left faint wet marks on the shiny marble floor. Beside him, Mr. Grant struggled to keep pace, checking his watch every few seconds. His smile stretched thin like an old rubber band about to snap. They reached the elevator. As the doors closed, Keanu caught his reflection in the mirror panel. Hoodie still damp, hair slightly messy from the storm, suitcase handle worn down by years of travel. He looked nothing like the man they expected to see. Maybe that was good. People showed you who they really were when they thought you were nobody special. When the elevator doors opened again, they stepped into the top floor. The boardroom doors were already cracked open. Inside, 12 men and women sat around a long glass table. They wore expensive suits and forced smiles. They whispered to each other like crows waiting to pick at something they didn't think could fly. Away, in front of them, stacks of papers, slides on big screens, charts, profits, losses. None of it showed the hidden cost of disrespect. Grant cleared his throat as they stepped in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting. Our lead investor has arrived. Keanu stayed by the door for a moment, his eyes sweeping the room. None of them stood up. None of them offered a seat. One man with a slicked-back hairstyle even gave him a once-over, eyes stopping at the battered suitcase like it was dirt on the carpet. Keanu knew that look too well. It was the same look Jason gave him when he tossed the bag. The same look the flight crew gave the man in first class they mocked. Keanu placed the suitcase on the table with a soft thud. The room went silent. The sound was small, but the echo felt like thunder in that glass box of power. "Before we begin," Keanu said, his voice calm but filling every corner of the room, "I want you to know something." The woman at the far end, the head of the legal team, forced a polite smile. "Mr. Reeves, we appreciate your time. Perhaps we can review the contracts first." Keanu raised his hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Do you know what trust looks like?" he asked, tapping the suitcase. "It looks like this, ordinary, scratched up, easy to ignore, easy to toss aside if you think you're better." Murmurs around the table. The slick-haired man scoffed. "Sir, with respect, we're here to talk numbers. This baggage story, it's sentimental, not business." Keanu's eyes flickered to Mr. Grant, then back to the board. "And that's the problem," he said, voice steady. "You think this is about numbers. You think kindness and respect are extra, a bonus you sprinkle on top when it's convenient. But they are not extras. They are the foundation. If you don't protect the small things, you will never keep the big ones." The head of finance leaned forward, tapping his pen impatiently. "What does this have to do with the buyout?" Keanu unzipped the old suitcase. Inside, instead of clothes, were dozens of small notes, each one a letter he had written to himself over years of lonely flights and quiet hotel rooms. Reminders from his mother, words from strangers who showed him small acts of kindness. He picked up one note, read it softly. "Respect is free but priceless when you give it. Worthless when you pretend." The room fell so quiet they could hear the rain tapping the windows high above the city. One of the younger board members, a woman barely 30, looked at Keanu with wide eyes. She got it. He could see it in the way her shoulders relaxed, like she'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. Keanu looked at each face. "I met your ground crew today. I met your flight crew. They laugh at passengers. They mock them behind their backs. They throw people's memories around like garbage. You sit up here counting pennies while trust leaks out the bottom." Mr. Grant's face turned pale. He shifted nervously but stayed silent. He knew Keanu wasn't angry. He was something worse. Disappointed. Keanu placed the note back in the suitcase and closed it carefully. "I didn't come here just to sign papers. I came here to remind you. I will not own a company that forgets people are more important than profit. If I do this, if I put my name on this, then this airline will be known for how well it carries people's trust." The slick-haired man scoffed again. "You think you can change how thousands of people work just by saying be kind? You're dreaming." Keanu smiled, small and sure. "Yes, that's what kindness does. It makes people dream of better. It reminds them that they can be more than a paycheck and a uniform." The young board member spoke up, her voice shaky but clear. "What do you want us to do?" Keanu looked at her, then at all of them. "You're going to start by treating your crew with the respect you expect from them. You're going to train them to care for the smallest bag like it's a diamond. You're going to remind them that every passenger is a story, not a seat number." The head of legal started to protest, but Keanu cut her off gently. "You can fight me on this, but if you do, you can find another investor. I won't carry this airline if it won't carry people the right way." The storm outside had stopped, but inside that glass room, something shifted. They didn't clap, they didn't stand. But one by one, they looked at each other and realized the real buyout wasn't about money. It was about whether they were ready to change who they were when no one was looking. Keanu picked up his suitcase, nodded once, and walked to the window. The city below sparkled in the wet glow of fresh rain. For the first time that day, he felt a soft hope that maybe, just maybe, a few careless people could become caretakers again. The ripple starts small. KeanuReeves stepped out of the tall glass tower into the fresh smell of rain on warm pavement. He held his old suitcase tight, like a promise he refused to break. Behind him, the boardroom buzzed with quiet arguments and worried whispers. Some still thought they could keep doing things the old way, numbers over people, profits over respect. But some, he saw it in their eyes, knew the truth, that the small, silent storm had already begun to spread. Grant trailed after Keanu, breathless, trying to catch up as they reached the waiting car. "Sir, if you'd like, we can prepare a press statement," he panted. "We can spin this whole kindness idea as a branding push. People love a good story." Keanu stopped so suddenly that Mr. Grant nearly tripped over his polished shoes. Keanu turned, his face calm but his eyes sharp as broken glass. "It's not a story," he said softly. "It's a standard." Mr. Grant's mouth opened and closed, no words finding their way out. Keanu turned away and slid into the back seat of the car. The driver glanced at him through the mirror, recognizing him but saying nothing. Keanu liked it better that way. No fuss, no performance. Just people doing their job with quiet respect. As they drove away, the city lights blurred past the rain-smeared window. Keanu thought about the handler named Jason. He wondered if Jason would wake up tomorrow and remember the look in his eyes, the disappointment that spoke louder than any threat. Maybe he'd do better, maybe not, but at least he'd know someone saw him, really saw him, not as a worker to push around but as a person who held people's trust in his hands. The car pulled up to a small hotel, nothing fancy, just quiet and warm. Inside, an older bellhop with shaky hands reached for Keanu's suitcase, but Keanu held onto it. "I've got it, thanks," he said gently. The bellhop nodded, grateful not to be made to struggle in front of a guest. As Keanu passed the front desk, the young woman working night shift looked up and smiled shyly. She recognized him too, but more than that, she seemed to feel the calm he carried with him like a soft blanket in a cold world. Up in his room, Keanu placed the suitcase on the bed. He sat beside it, running his hand over the torn sticker that still read "Be kind." Half faded but stubborn enough to stay. He thought about his mother's words again, the ones he always heard when life tested his patience. "If you want the world to hold you gently, you must hold it gently first." Hours passed. He watched the rain stop, the sky clear, the first hints of dawn crawling across the city rooftops. His phone buzzed with messages from Mr. Grant, drafts of statements, reminders of meetings, worried questions about the board's vote. Keanu ignored them for now. Some things needed time to breathe before you wrap them in official words. By mid-morning, news had started to leak. Some employee at the airport had recorded him speaking to the handlers. The video went viral. The famous actor standing in a tiny staff room, not yelling, not threatening, but reminding grown men to handle bags with care like they carried people's hearts inside them. The comments flooded in. Some people praised him, some mocked him, some called it a stunt. But a strange thing happened too. Baggage handlers from other cities started to comment under the video, promising they'd do better. Flight attendants shared stories of passengers they'd forgotten to be gentle with, small ripples spreading out from one dented bag. Keanu left the hotel late that afternoon. He walked back to the airport. No special car, no cameras, just him and his old suitcase. Inside the terminal, the same young mother from the flight stood near the check-in counter again, her toddler now asleep on her shoulder. She looked exhausted but lighter somehow. When she saw him, her eyes lit up. She stepped closer, hesitant. "They're being nicer today," she whispered, like she didn't quite believe it. "The guy who checked us in, he asked how my boy was doing. He smiled at us. That didn't happen before." Keanu smiled back, his chest warming in a way no luxury ever could. "Good," he said. "You both deserve that." A manager nearby, overhearing them, stepped forward, looking stiff and nervous. "Sir, I wanted to say we're working on better training. I saw the video. People are talking. They want to know how you did that, how you made them listen." Keanu looked at him, soft but steady. "You don't make people listen," he said. "You remind them they matter." The manager looked down, eyes wet. No one had ever told him that at his job. He had spent years feeling invisible, like his worth was tied only to schedules and spreadsheets. Now, here he was, standing in front of a man with a battered suitcase who was teaching him how to be human again. Keanu stood near the big glass windows for a while, watching baggage carts roll by. This time, he noticed something different. The handlers moved slower, more careful, checking tags twice, setting bags down instead of tossing them. Small things, but the kind that change everything. For the first time in a long while, Keanu felt like his mother would be proud. He hadn't shouted, he hadn't demanded. He had simply asked for what people should have been giving each other all along: respect. He looked at the rain drying on the runway, the first rays of sunlight making the pavement shine like a mirror. In that reflection, he saw the truth. He wanted everyone to see that sometimes the biggest change starts with the smallest choice to care. The new flight plan. KeanuReeves stood by the giant window as the last clouds drifted away, letting sunlight pour over the runway. Planes took off one by one, each one carrying hundreds of bags, small suitcases, heavy trunks, wedding dresses, baby blankets, family gifts, each bag a tiny world of memories and hope that someone trusted a stranger to carry safely. He felt the weight of his own suitcase in his hand. It felt lighter now, even though it was the same battered thing with its torn "Be Kind" sticker. Maybe it felt lighter because he knew that somewhere behind those windows, a tired crew was now more careful. Maybe they would stumble, make mistakes, but maybe they would also remember his quiet words the next time they touched someone else's story. Nearby, Mr. Grant jogged up to him, breathless again, holding a sheaf of papers. "Sir, we need your final signature," he said. "The buyout will be official today." Keanu didn't rush. He took the papers, reading every line slowly. The terminal bustled around him. Announcements called families to gates. Children tugged on their parents' hands, and busy people checked their watches, unaware that somewhere deep in the back rooms, old habits were shifting like pebbles, rolling before a landslide. "The crew is talking," Mr. Grant added nervously. "They're not sure what happens now. Some think they'll lose their jobs if they don't do everything perfectly." Keanu turned to face him, suitcase handle resting against his leg. "Tell them they won't lose anything for trying to be better," he said softly. "Tell them we'll train, guide, remind, not punish for being human. Kindness isn't a rule, it's a seed. You don't threaten seeds to grow, you water them." Grant's shoulders dropped as if someone had lifted a stone off his back. For the first time, he looked at Keanu not as a client, but as a teacher. "I'll tell them, sir," he said quietly. Keanu signed the last page, the ink drying on. The promise that this airline would now carry more than bags. It would carry trust, one passenger at a time. He handed the papers back and turned to leave, but then he paused, glancing toward the baggage carts moving in a line like loyal ants outside the window. "One more thing," he said. "Yes, sir." Keanu pointed to the ramp where a new crew loaded suitcases, handling each one gently, almost like they'd been practicing all night for this. "Start with them," he said. "Give them the first training session. Let them be the example. Every time they touch someone's bag, remind them they're carrying someone's heart." Grant nodded, writing it down like it was more important than any number on a chart. Keanu made his way toward the exit, suitcase rolling behind him. As he passed the check-in desk, he saw the young handler, Jason, standing by the belt. Jason's cap was turned forward now, hair tucked neatly underneath. His eyes caught Keanu's for just a second. There was no smirk this time. Instead, he gave a small nod, an apology without words. Keanu nodded back, as if to say, "It's never too late to hold things gently." He stepped outside into the morning sun. The rain was gone now, but the ground still shone with what it had left behind, like a reminder that even a storm can clean the world if you let it. Keanu stood still for a moment, breathing in the warmth. He felt the weight of every city he'd flown to, every stranger he'd met, every tiny act of care that had carried him through the worst days. He walked toward the street, past people who barely noticed him, which was how he liked it best. They didn't know the man with the beat-up suitcase had just bought an entire airline. They didn't know he wasn't taking it for himself but giving it back to them, piece by piece, through every bag, every gentle hand, every small respect that once seemed too small to matter. The wind picked up, tugging at his hoodie. He smiled to himself, hearing his mother's voice in the quiet corner of his mind. "If you want the world to hold you gently, you must hold it gently first." And so, with a battered suitcase and a promise carried on the breeze, KeanuReeves stepped forward, knowing that even the smallest kindness can lift the heaviest bag.